The United States, Canada, and Australia were like three brothers. They fought together, they traded together, they spied for each other. But today, one of those brothers just walked away from the table. Australia didn't just say no to Donald Trump's latest demands. They didn't just ignore his threats. They did something much more dangerous. They picked up the phone and called Mark Carney. And they didn't just call him for a chat. They invited the Canadian Prime Minister to address their parliament, an honor usually reserved for the President of the United States. Trump tried to isolate Canada. He tried to bully Ottawa into submission, but Carney didn't blink. Instead, he reached across the Pacific. And now the consequences are hitting the White House like a freight train. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this alliance just shattered, why Trump is suddenly looking very lonely on the world stage, and why this specific move by Australia could cost you money if you're holding US dollars. This isn't just diplomacy. This is a global realignment, and you are watching it happen in real time. So what exactly happened today? Early this morning, the Australian Prime Minister's office released a statement that caught Washington completely off guard. They announced that Mark Carney will be traveling to Australia next week to deliver a historic joint address to their parliament. Now, you have to understand the protocol here. You don't just invite foreign leaders to speak to your government unless you are sending a massive signal. Usually, the first call an Australian leader makes is to the US president. Usually, the first state visit is a handshake with the man in the Oval Office. Not this time. This time, Australia looked at the chaos coming out of Trump's White House, the tariff threats, the erratic tweets, the demands for total loyalty. And they looked at Mark Carney's calm, calculated strategy in Canada, and they made a choice. They chose the adult in the room. This invitation is a direct rejection of Trump's America First pressure. We know that behind the scenes, Trump's team has been leaning hard on Australia. They wanted Australia to back Trump's trade war against Canada. They wanted Canberra to join the blockade. They wanted a united front against Ottawa to force Carney to bend the knee. But instead of joining Trump's trade war, Australia just signed up for Carney's coalition. This is a shock to the system because Australia is supposed to be America's most loyal deputy. They are the southern anchor of the U.S. alliance. If Trump can't even control Australia, if he can't even keep them in line, then he has lost control of the English-speaking world. Carney is going there to talk about resource security and middle power stability. That's the polite way of saying it. The real translation, he's going there to build a world economy that functions without Donald Trump's permission. And the White House is absolutely furious. You might be thinking, is this really that big of a deal? Politicians visit each other all the time, right? Wrong. You need to look at the receipts. You need to look at the timing, because when you stack up the facts, you see that this was a coordinated, deliberate slap in the face to Donald Trump. Let's look at receipt number 1, the AUKUS silence. Remember AUKUS? That massive nuclear submarine deal between the US, the UK, and Australia? That was the crown jewel of American influence in the Pacific. Trump has been threatening to put that deal on hold unless Australia pays more. He's been using it as leverage. He thought he had them trapped. But look at the wording in the Australian press release today. They didn't mention the US once, not once. They talked about Commonwealth partnership. They talked about critical minerals. They talked about strategic alignment with Canada. By inviting Carney, Australia is signaling that they have a plan B. If Trump kills the subdeal, they aren't going to beg. They are going to pivot. And they are pivoting to the guy who knows how to run an economy. Now look at receipt number 2, the trade numbers. Trump has been threatening a 10% universal tariff on everyone, including allies. He thinks this makes him tough. He thinks it makes the US rich. But look at what the markets are doing. Since the rumor of Carney's visit leaked, the Australian dollar actually rallied against the US greenback. Why? Because the markets hate uncertainty. Trump is pure chaos. Carney is pure stability. Investors are betting that a Canada-Australia resource block controlling massive amounts of the world's uranium, lithium, and gold is a safer bet than a volatile US market ruled by midnight tweets. The money is literally moving away from Trump's volatility and toward Carney's stability. That is a receipt you can't fake. And finally, receipt number 3, the Trump reaction. You don't have to guess if this hurt Trump. He told us. Just 2 hours after the announcement, Trump took to his platform. He didn't offer congratulations, he didn't talk about friendship, he posted a rant about how Australia is freeloading and how Canada is dishonest. He called the Australian Prime Minister weak. He threatened to review all military cooperation. That is not the reaction of a leader who is in control. That is the reaction of a man who just realized he's being left out of the conversation. When the President of the United States has to resort to name-calling against his closest allies, it's because he has lost the leverage to stop them. He tried to stop this visit. We know his diplomats were making frantic calls to Canberra all week. Don't invite Carney. Wait until we settle the trade deal. Don't embarrass the president. And Australia ignored him. They sent the invite anyway. That is the ultimate receipt. The fear of Trump is gone. And once the fear is gone, his power evaporates. So why is this happening? Why is the most powerful man on earth losing his grip on his friends? It's because Trump is trapped in an old way of thinking. He thinks the world is a series of one-on-one real estate deals. He thinks he can bully Canada today, then bully Australia tomorrow, and then bully Europe the next day, and none of them will talk to each other. He thinks he's the hub of the wheel, and everyone else is just a spoke. But here is what he forgot. The spokes can connect. Trump's entire strategy relies on isolation. He needs you to feel alone. He told Canada, you are alone against the US economy. He told Australia, you are alone against China. He uses fear to make you compliant. But when he pushes too hard, people start looking for alternatives. Trump escalated the tariffs on Canadian steel. He thought Canada would fold. Instead, Carney called Europe. Trump threatened to pull security guarantees from NATO. He thought they would pay up. Instead, they started building their own defense packs. And now Trump threatened Australia's trade access. He thought they would beg. Instead, they called Carney. Do you see the pattern? Every time Trump uses the stick, he doesn't get obedience. He gets fragmentation. He is literally driving his allies into each other's arms. He is creating the very thing he fears most, a coalition of countries that don't need him. This is a failure of leadership on a historic scale. A true leader builds alliances to project power. Trump burns alliances to project toughness. But toughness isn't power. Toughness is just noise. Power is having people pick up the phone when you call. Right now, nobody wants to pick up the phone for Donald Trump because they know what's on the other end: threats, demands, and instability. Meanwhile, they look at Ottawa. They see a government that is calm. They see a prime minister in Mark Carney who understands global finance better than anyone in the Trump administration. They see a partner who keeps his word. Trump is losing control because he made himself a liability. In the world of high-stakes geopolitics, you can be a bully or you can be reliable. You can't be a volatile bully. That's too much risk. Australia did the math. The risk of angering Trump was high, but the risk of relying on him was higher. They broke ranks. Now that the dam has broken, you are going to see other countries pouring through the breach. Now, let's talk about Mark Carney, because what he is doing here is masterful. It's very different from how politicians usually fight. Most leaders, when they get attacked by a US president, they get defensive. They wrap themselves in the flag. They give angry speeches. They try to look tough for their home crowd. Carney didn't do any of that. He didn't get into a Twitter war with Trump. He didn't issue empty threats. He went to work. Carney operates on a different level. He understands that in the 21st century, power isn't just about who has the biggest aircraft carriers. It's about who controls the flow of critical resources. It's about who writes the rules of trade. While Trump is obsessed with tariffs, which are 19th century weapons, Carney is building a 21st century network. He knows that Canada and Australia together control a massive percentage of the world's uranium, potash, lithium, and rare earth minerals. These are the things you need for phones, for missiles, for electric cars, for the future. By aligning with Australia, Carney is creating a resource superpower block. He is saying to the world, if you want the materials to build the future, you have to talk to us. We aren't going to let Washington dictate the price. This is the middle power strategy. He's uniting the countries that are too big to be bullied, but too small to rule the world alone. He's knitting them together into a force that even the United States has to respect. It's quiet. It's complex. It's boring to people who want drama, but it is deadly effective. Trump is playing checkers. He's jumping pieces and shouting, "King me." Carney is playing 4D chess. He's moving pieces on boards that Trump doesn't even know exist. And the difference in style is glaring. Trump demands loyalty. Carney offers value. Trump wants vassals. Carney wants partners. Trump breaks contracts. Carney builds systems. That is why Australia invited him. Not because they love Canada, but because they trust Carney's competence more than they trust Trump's chaos.
This visit to Canberra isn't a victory lap, it's a work session. They are going to sit down and design a trade architecture that bypasses the chaos in Washington. They are Trump-proofing their economies, and that is the most insulting thing you can do to a narcissist. You don't fight him, you just render him irrelevant. So let's zoom out. What does this mean for you? Why should you care if two politicians meet in Canberra? Because this is the moment the cost of America alone starts to hit home. For decades, the American passport, the American dollar, and the American word were the gold standard. That stability kept prices down. It kept supply chains moving. It meant that if you were an American business, the world rolled out the red carpet. But if countries like Australia and Canada, countries that look like us, speak like us, and fight with us, are deciding to work around the United States, that system is breaking. If they start trading critical minerals in their own currencies or setting standards that ignore U.S. demands, the cost of doing business in America goes up. Think about the products you buy, the electronics, the batteries, the fertilizer for the food you eat.
If Canada and Australia prioritize each other over the U.S., supply chains get tighter, prices rise. We are already seeing it. Companies are pausing investments in U.S. factories because they don't know if they'll be able to get the raw materials from Canada or Australia without a 20% tariff. Uncertainty is a tax, and Trump just raised taxes on everyone by making the world more uncertain. This also signals a massive loss of trust. If Australia doesn't trust Washington with its security and trade, why would Japan? Why would South Korea? Why would Germany? We are looking at a future where the United States is an island, not a fortress, an island cut off from the easy cooperation that made it rich. Trump promised he would make the world respect America again. But respect isn't fear. Respect is when your friends listen to you. Right now, America's friends are holding meetings without us. They are making plans without us. They are building a future where the U.S. is just another big, loud country, not the leader of the free world. Even if you don't care about politics, you care about your wallet. And a world where America is isolated is a world where everything in America costs more. There is a moment from this morning that I can't get out of my head. It's a photo that was snapped just minutes after the announcement. On one side of the screen, you had Donald Trump at a rally in Ohio, red-faced, shouting into a microphone about traders and tariffs, with a crowd that looked angry and tired. On the other side, you saw the video feed from Canberra. It was just a simple handshake between the Australian High Commissioner and the Canadian envoy. No shouting, no banners, just two people in suits signing a piece of paper and getting back to work. That contrast is the whole story. One side is noise. The other side is action. One side is tearing things down. The other side is building something new. Carney didn't have to raise his voice to be heard in Australia. He just had to be sane. And in 2026, sanity is a revolutionary act. So, where does this go from here? We are entering dangerous territory. There are 3 ways this plays out in the next few weeks. Scenario A. This is the most likely path. Trump lashes out. He announces punitive tariffs on Australian wine or beef. He tweets something insulting about the Australian PM. He tries to punish them for the betrayal. But here's the thing. It won't work. Australia has already priced that in. If he hits them, it just pushes them closer to Canada. It accelerates the very thing he's trying to stop. It proves Carney right. Scenario B. The domino effect. This is what the White House really fears. The UK is watching this closely. New Zealand is watching. Japan is watching. If Carney's visit to Australia is a success, if they sign a major resource deal, you could see London invite Carney next. Imagine that. The entire British Commonwealth uniting economically to protect themselves from American instability. A global safety net alliance that excludes the U.S. That is a geopolitical disaster for Washington, and it is a very real possibility. Scenario C, the absolute worst-case scenario. Trump decides to weaponize the military alliance. He threatens to pull intelligence sharing. He threatens to ground the joint fighter jet programs. This would be the nuclear option. It would tear the Five Eyes alliance apart. It would blind U.S. intelligence agencies. It would leave America deaf and blind in the Pacific just to satisfy one man's ego. Normally, you'd say no president would be that reckless. But look at who we are talking about. Trump doesn't do restraint. We are in the danger zone. The old rules are gone. Canada and Australia have decided they can't wait for America to come back to its senses. They are moving on. And the scary part isn't that they are leaving. The scary part is that they might not need to come back. This is a turning point. You will look back at this week and remember it as the moment the Anglosphere stopped revolving around Washington. Carney is flying to Australia not just as a prime minister, but as the architect of a post-Trump world. And Trump is left shouting at the walls, wondering why his threats stopped working. The question you have to ask yourself is this: is Mark Carney protecting the global order, or is he dismantling American influence? Or did Donald Trump do that to himself? I want to hear from you. Is Australia right to break ranks and invite Carney, or is this a betrayal of their alliance with the U.S.? Let me know in the comments. I read them, and I want to know where you stand. And if you want to know what happens when Carney lands in Canberra and how Trump retaliates, hit that subscribe button, because the mainstream news is too afraid to call this what it is. But we aren't. Stay watching. This is far from over.